How's that?
We have audio and it actually sounds good.
Sound good? Check.
That's hammer for the time being. We'll come up with something for the rest of it.
Tell Drew he should smile more.
Drew, you should smile more.
Don't ever have to hear him fine on the radio from across the room.
He said you're a little bitch.
Hey,
We'll edit that part out, right?
Hey, Trevor, the only problem is it's very obvious that all the audio is coming from behind the camera and you hear Drew echo about 4 times.
That's reverb. We'll clean up in post-production.
No one's listening anyway.
All right, we ready?
You're good to go.
All right. This is kind of a last-second replacement panel type deal. I think we...
Everything you do is last second.
I will actually prove his point in a moment. Well, actually, yeah, I was kind of writing the notes for this talk less than half an hour ago, so case in point. I'm not sure what the story was on the guy who was supposed to be speaking at this time. I think he was afraid of violating parole by leaving his home state or whatever, so he canceled and they asked me to do this last second. I made about 24 phone calls to, I sent out about 24 emails and made a bunch of phone calls trying to track down some of the other local DJs to get a little more perspective, more than one opinion on this. And out of the half dozen or so responses I've received so far, they were pretty much all, I would love to do it, but I can't get off work, or I'm out of town. One guy in Austin, Texas, who does one of the techno shows at WRBU on the weekends, apparently doing some kind of wireless convention out in Texas, and he was talking about just kind of calling in sick and flying back early the last day to appear on the panel. It's like, no, dude, really, you're making money out there. You know, it's okay, and I would appreciate it. But basically what I'm going to be talking about is getting access to the airwaves, which is kind of a tough thing for a lot of people to do these days. And relate my experiences and how I've managed to do it. And this is going to focus mainly on radio stations in and around Nashville, but this will apply to just about any other large or larger urban area. And I'd love to, if you want to pursue this and get on there and have fun with it. I've enjoyed DJing at WRBU. I did a show there from 1994 to 2001. Every week had a blast and made a lot of new friends that way. And I was never a Vanderbilt student and kind of socially engineered my way into that, so I guess that's how this will tie into hacking, quote unquote. You get in on the technical side if you want to build transmitters and go out and do pirate radio, which I'll talk about that in a moment too. Or you can apply your uber elite social engineering skills and get access to a transmitter that maybe technically legally you have no reason to be near at all whatsoever, which is pretty much what I did. So, if you haven't noticed, it does sound a little bit. We're going to get some bad feedback if that continues. Check, test. Got it? Okay, that sounds better. My experiences with radio actually started down in Gainesville, Florida back in the late 80s when I was in college. I guess I can talk about this openly now since the statute of limitations has expired. University of Florida is kind of a weird situation. They've got 3 radio stations down there. It's a pretty damn big university, one of the larger ones in the country. And they've got a commercial FM station and an AM station that's just a feeder off the FM, same content, different station IDs. And they had a second FM station that was a non-commercial station, but it was pretty much classical music only. And it was all 3 of these radio stations were in the middle of the College of Journalism on the University of Florida campus, and students didn't have access to any of them. The non-commercial station I can kind of see that. It's a similar situation to MTSU's WMOT, which is the non-commercial jazz station. But the really crappy thing was that a few years before I started college down there, the student-run FM radio station had come up for its 7-year periodic FCC license renewal. And most FM stations have their license renewed every 7 years or so, and make sure that they are serving the community appropriately in the areas in which they cover and broadcast, blah, blah, blah. And the university did a very interesting thing. They basically bought the student FM radio station and its AM feeder from the College of Journalism, and then turned around and sold it to a commercial entity. would be the equivalent of KDF back when they were still broadcasting rock here in Nashville, or whatever the new rock station is here. So you have a radio station facilities that for years have belonged to the College of Journalism and been operated by students. It was suddenly yanked out kind of from underneath their feet and sold to a commercial entity that said, you're not allowed. Yeah, questions in the back? If you got questions, raise your hand and I'll try to get to you. Yeah?
Yeah, apparently they're still happening up in the Northeast. A lot of colleges have decided it's too expensive to run their own, and they're doing exactly the same thing.
So, okay, the comment was apparently it's happening a lot in the Northeast. Even today, a lot of colleges are deciding it's too expensive to run their own and they're selling them. Get with me after this talk. I'd be interested in finding out specifically which ones are doing that and when they went through. That's kind of a disturbing trend. As I was saying, you had this situation where all of a sudden the station that students had access to was basically taken away from them and turned over to a commercial entity that threw them all out and said, you know, basically don't give a shit about you, we're here to make money. And thus was born WRAG, where Radio Alternative Gainesville, with two screaming watts of power at the bottom of the FM barrel. I think they were broadcasting on 87.9, if I remember correctly. And basically, the station started out at 1 watt with what later became the Ramsey FM10 stereo transmitter kit. And at 1 watt even, this radio station could pretty much cover every place in Alachua County, which is where the University of Florida in Gainesville are located. Signal was kind of crappy. If you're broadcasting at the lower end of the spectrum, you don't FM band. Basically, you're not going to cover as much area as you do on a higher band. That's why your larger commercial FM stations tend to be up near the top of the FM band, around 106, 107. Their range is just a bit farther compared to the ones broadcasting in the bottom of the FM band, which would be, in this case, here in Nashville, WRBU 91.1 FM, and WMTS, which is the 200-watt student station at MTSU. So, since we were a pirate station operating very illegally, a somewhat erratic schedule, we couldn't really let people know when we were broadcasting with any regularity. We tried to do 5 or 6 hours a day and move the transmitter pretty frequently. We also took great pains not to interfere with any of the other commercial stations that were on the air. We would pick up empty frequencies and we would put posters and flyers up on telephone poles around campus, and some of the indie music stores that thought it was neat. I even brought up in one of my radio classes, asked the professor what they thought about WRAG, and it was kind of an odd reaction. They didn't like it. They were like, these people are criminals, they need to go to jail, they're breaking the law, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of failed to see the whole point that, well, the reason they did this was because the students now no longer had access to the broadcast facilities here at the university and in the College of Journalism, which we're paying money to attend, but you won't let us near the equipment. Yeah, so that's kind of fucked up and wrong to you. But whatever. So, I was also kind of getting very disillusioned with my journalism degree at the time. The first radio class I took was pretty much a quote, because it surprised the hell out of me. The first day in that class, the professor said, if you were here because you want to play cool and interesting music on the air, you're basically in the wrong place, and you may want to investigate going out and learning how to DJ at clubs and stuff, and forget about a career in radio. Basically, commercial radio exists for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is you pick whatever you are broadcasting, whether it's music, news, whatever, to attract a target audience, and then you sell advertising to that target audience, and you make your money off your ad ratings. And yeah, Clear Channel, it's a great example. I'll get to it in a bit. And I thought that just kind of sucked because there's a lot of radio spectrum out there, and radio can reach a lot of people, and I think it can be used for more than, at least the broadcast stuff that we listen to, it can be used for more than just selling commercials, with music or news or whatever as filler to attract people. And if you listen to most commercial FM radio stations, that's what they're there for. They're there to maybe play a few songs to get you listen, and then fill everything between songs with commercial, so when you go out and buy stuff or do whatever it is their advertising is trying to sell you. And that's the sole reason for their existence, and that's all they care about, and that's why a lot of commercial radio sucks going on. If you want to do the pirate route, don't do what WRAG did after I left, and I'm glad I wasn't part of that because they got fined pretty heavily when they were caught. Don't smoke up a lot before you go on the air, and get lazy about moving the transmitter and broadcast the regular schedule from the same spot for weeks on end, because eventually the FCC will track you down and get a knock on your door, and you can send them away. You don't have to let the FCC guys in unless they've actually got cops and a search warrant, but if it gets to that point, you're pretty much screwed. They know where you are. These are smart people. They can track transmitters down. And if you get served, right now the current fines are running between $10,000 and $14,000. Yeah. I believe FCC now gets a percentage of the fines that they serve too, so they've got a real incentive to go out and serve fines. And kind of check into RICO laws, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I have a question back here, yes, sir.
Does the FCC keep track of bandwidth or radio frequency in all areas, or do they only investigate when they receive a call?
They're pretty much reactive. They investigate when they receive calls. And I'll give you an example of that in a little bit when I get my experiences with WRDU. One of the interesting things, a couple of the interesting things I found the Europirates did, they had two basic methods for doing this. One was the kind of the hit and run broadcasters would get, and this is very clever, old cassette players out of cars, like car stereos, international. You can pick those up dirt cheap now, and they would use those. They would record the show on tape. They would use the cassette player because it's been in a car. It's designed, it's engineered to be rugged and expect a lot of bouncing around and not the best environmental conditions compared to like a really high-end stereo system you would have at home. So they would yank those things out, have basically batteries and a timer, and a lot of them would string their antennas up with balloons and put them up in trees. And they would go set up their equipment somewhere out in the boonies on top of this big hill, have the timer set to broadcast after they had enough time to get away. At the end of the broadcast, everything would shut itself off, and they would kind of cruise by, and if there was no one in the area, they could pick up their equipment again. If someone had tracked the equipment down, especially law enforcement people, if they've lost $100 worth of gear, it's not going to break you or anything. A lot of times you can get the in-dash tape players for cheap. If you want to go the really expensive route, Radio Caroline probably pissed off more government officials in Europe than any other radio station in history. And what they did was they outfitted a large boat and put some pretty powerful transmitters in, AM, FM, and shortwave, and just sat out in international waters. They were in it was technically a cove in the southern part of the United Kingdom, but they were clearly in international waters by several miles. And they just sat out there and they broadcast for decades. And no one could do anything about it. They couldn't shut them down, they were in their heyday during the late 60s and early 70s. You can do a Google on Radio Caroline and find out about their demise. Basically, the way the British government got rid of them was they got tired of getting all these complaints, so they rewrote some of their laws and part of the Constitution and said, okay, our international waters extend this many miles now out in this one small section just off the coast of the UK, and nowhere else. Everything else is unchanged from this one area beside our international waters pushed out now to 12 miles instead of 9 or whatever it was. So Radio Caroline had to change locations. They parked out someplace on the North Sea, off the coast on the North Sea, which is a lot stormier than this calm area. And a couple months after they did that, they got hit during a pretty big storm. Their 300-foot mast on their boat collapsed, and they were really fully recovered after that. Eventually, I think the boat was seized by the authorities and towed into dock and sat there rotting for a while. But now it's being fixed up and it's going to be either a restaurant / historic site or something like that. So the boat's being salvaged, and that's pretty cool. There was a similar attempt to Radio Caroline back in the very late 80s, and that took place off on the coast of Long Island up in the New York area. And this is, again, kind of disturbing behavior on the U.S. government part. The ship was registered out of, I believe, Venezuela. And They had a couple of 10,000 watt transmitters on there, pretty big music collection. They were very clearly in international waters. I think they were 4 miles out, if I remember correctly. They said they were at least 1 mile out in international waters. And they didn't even get a chance to go on the air. The second or third day they were doing practice power-ups and tuning the transmitters. They were boarded by the Coast Guard, who held them at gunpoint while FCC agents came on board and sawed up the transmitters and threw them over the side of the boat and then walked out with the music collection and said, "What are you going to do about it?" Basically, the Coast Guard and the FCC committed an act of piracy in international waters against the ship registered to another government. And there wasn't really a lot of mainstream media coverage about that, but pretty well documented in a book by Al Weiner, W-I-E-N-E-R, who was the guy responsible for that. And Lou Panic sells his book. I should have wrote the title of it down. Do a Google on Al Weiner and you'll find his book. I think it's linked on the Hobby Broadcasting, that's one word.com site as well. Very interesting book. This guy is probably America's biggest and most notorious pirate radio operator. Now, pirate radio scares you off, and you don't have a whole lot of money, but you do want to play around with this. There's an interesting part of the FCC regs, Part 15, which allows pretty much unlicensed transmitters that don't cause any interference up to 1 watt. And, okay, you might think, okay, 1 watt, what are you going to do with 1 watt? Well, again, with Radio Alternative Gainesville, we were able to cover pretty much everything in Gainesville city limits, and on good days, pretty much most of the Alachua County with 1 watt, depending on where we have the transmitter located. On top of a building like this might be an interesting project for PhreakNIC 8 next year. We try a 1 watt transmitter, make sure we're not interfering with anybody, and see how far it can be picked up. So anyone who wants to play with radio, any ham radio operators out there who want to do some hands-on with the gear, there's your project for next year. Get cracking. Ramsey Electronics sells a couple of different 1 watt kits that you can play around with too. You can buy them pre-assembled if you don't want to build them yourself. And moving on to bigger and more interesting. As I said, I had a lot of fun with WRNG, and went out did roadie stuff for a couple of years before moving back up here to Nashville, and was always a big fan of WRVU up here. How many people are familiar with WRVU, Pentecost radio station? 91.1 on the FM dial. It's a student-run radio station broadcasting at 10,000 watts, and they used to be 14,500 watts, and then we realized that oops, our antenna is at a higher elevation than we thought when we were originally licensed for our power output, and we were basically covering a whole lot of area outside where we were officially licensed to cover, so they had to drop the transmitter power down to 10,000 watts about 4 years ago. But you can still hear WRVU pretty much all over Middle Tennessee, and to the north, I know you can hear it out in Clarksville and Fort Campbell up over in Kentucky. When we were broadcasting at 14.5, a lot of times we'd be picked up down in Alabama. Not far into Alabama, but I've heard them down there myself on a couple of occasions. Helping someone move once, and I wanted to see how far I could pick up WRVU as I drove closer and closer to Tennessee, and heard them while I was still over the border in Alabama. What I got into WRVU is a little bit of bribery and knowing the right people and basic social engineering skills. Friends with people in several bands and several defunct bands here and around Nashville, and there was a lot of crossover between the local bands and some of the local DJs. And I met one of the DJs because of a local band called the Brennan Plowman. They don't exist anymore. They were kind of, do you remember Brennan Plowman?
Yeah, great band.
Yeah, kind of a weird, this is bizarre for Nashville. They were kind of a Nashville industrial goth rockabilly band, if you can believe it.
I think it all spectrums.
So the Brennan Plowman band members were friends with some WRVU DJs. I used to help out on Brennan Plowman shows a lot and started hanging out at parties they would throw at the radio station, sometimes on the air. Got to know a few DJs, and they couldn't buy booze legally, and I could, and there the connection was made, and was told by the station manager at the time, tell you what, if you want to do a show during the summer when we're really not on the air that much, just come to one of the regular sign-up meetings. You know how to run the year. And when we hand out the sign-up forms, just put yourself down as a Vanderbilt alum. Okay, that worked. And dating the station engineer a couple years later was another way to cover my ass. And I just started DJing, doing a show every week. There's an awful lot of people here. That was fun. And my shows were usually on between midnight and 6 a.m., which is safe harbor hours. You can get away with a lot more. Technically, the only things you can't do during safe harbor hours is you can't say some of George Carlin's 7 dirty words, and you have to say the station ID at the top of the hour. Other than that, you can go pretty much freeform. There were times that I would have 2, 3, 4 different sound sources all running at the same time for an hour nonstop while I was drinking with friends or somewhere else, and we get back to the station at the top of the hour and go, "You are listening to WRBU Nashville, 91 Rock." Music come back on, and that was it. And
That was it.
yeah, 91 Noise, both on X. Yeah. Holy shit, you heard the show? Okay. All right, so the interesting thing with college radio stations is you have a lot of people who will come in at the beginning of every fall semester, get all fired up about it, and they'll show up for maybe 2 or 3 shows and realize, oh, there's some work involved here if you don't want to sound like an idiot on the air. And then they steal a few CDs and they never show up again. So by the time spring rolls around, especially in the summer, most of the kids go home. College radio stations have a hard time staying on air a lot, and that's when you get in there. You may call into the stations, talk to the DJs on the shows you like, and maybe ask if you can get toward the station during your show, help them pull some CDs or records, and find out when they have a sign-up meeting. Maybe sign up for a community class or something if you want to give yourself a little bit more legitimacy. And you can pretty much have your own show in the summer if you work at it a little bit. And this information spread around Nashville. We started getting more and more community volunteers, quote unquote, showing up to DJ at WRBU. And the Vanderbilt staff, a lot of people in the administration of Vanderbilt do not like WRBU. They feel it does not properly reflect the Vanderbilt image. Because, they play goth, industrial, and speed metal on occasion. A lot of the Vanderbilt students don't listen to it, but it is the only alternative non-commercial radio station in North Tennessee. So outside of the Vanderbilt community, WRBU has a huge following. And a lot of these people showed up and started doing the shows. And the great thing about college radio is even if you don't like one of the shows that you're hearing, you've got another DJ coming on usually in 2 or 3 hours, and you'll hear something you can't hear anywhere else. We started getting a lot of interesting specialist shows. People started winning awards, and it came to the attention of the Vanderbilt administration that a lot of these award-winning DJs weren't students, they weren't faculty or staff, they weren't alumni. But why the hell were they in the DJ booth controlling the 14,000 watt transmitter? And they started to purge all the community volunteers, I guess about 6 years ago, and then realized, oh, if we get rid of these people, we're going to lose this show, which won these awards. We're going to lose this show, which got these good press write-ups. We're going to lose this show. And they wrote in a clause adding a 4th category, which was community volunteers. So you may want to check and see if the college radio station in your area will allow community volunteers to do DJ shows, especially when there aren't a whole lot of students on campus. And things were going great with RBU for many, many years. Right now, there's been some problems over at the radio station. Sources inside tell me that they've got basically a spoiled young chick who's the station manager, and she's on a power trip, and they've purged a lot of the old-time DJs, which is why, one of the reasons why Vanderbilt's WRBU is not on the air nearly as much as you would expect this time of year. I think they're having a hard time making it more than a 12-hour day broadcast schedule. And if they keep that up, they're going to have their license either reduced or possibly transferred to another station. I know WMTS down in Murfreesboro would love to be able to up their power and possibly steal away some of the Vanderbilt audience. So that'll be an interesting situation to watch and see how it develops. I was hoping to have some of the Vanderbilt DJs here to give a little bit more information about that, because I have heard a few conflicting stories about what's going on exactly within the station. And I don't want to spread rumors unless I've got some facts to back them up. do have emails from several DJs though who have all pointed basically the same person who's causing problems. So
Does she like big band?
apparently her main problem was with the community volunteers. A lot of them had simply been at the radio station for years and years more than she had, and some stupid policy decisions were being put in place about what could be played or not played. She was messing around with specialty shows, and a lot of the long-time DJs were getting to the point like, okay, you know, at the time she was 19 years old and she was a station manager, and they were kind of giving her the attitude, you know, we've been here longer than you. GMs usually don't stay in a position of power for more than 1 year. We're kind of basically ignoring you, and you can fuck off, and next year someone who knows what they're doing will be in charge. Well, the student group that runs WRVU is known as the E-Staff. The core E-Staff cronies kind of rewrote their election laws a little bit without telling anybody else, and then basically elected this chick again for a second year as GM, which I don't think that's happened in about 20 years. And they basically threw out most of the community volunteers and saying, well, these slots should be reserved for Vanderbilt students, since the station is here for Vanderbilt students, which is a load of shit because they can't put enough students in the station now to keep the station on the air 24 hours a day. Yes, ma'am?
First time I ever listened to the station, I was listening to streaming audio, and a bunch of people had told me about it, and I was listening, and they were doing old-time jazz, whatever. DJ wasn't too bad, but he's going on and going, I'll be here for another hour, I'll be here for another 2 hours, whatever. Mid chant, whatever. Transmission. They just cut themselves off. I mean,
Well,
not 5 minutes before the guy had said, you know, oh, I've got another 2 hours on my shift, and I mean, he just stopped, and everything just went dead.
Transmitter could have died.
No, I called the station right after that.
Oh, okay.
They just said, oh, you know,
Oh, yeah, just in
that was
case
the end of
you're-
the show.
In case you're interested, the way they transmit out there is they've got 256K leased lines that each one transmits, each one delivers one stereo channel from Vanderbilt to the transmitter. I thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, college radio stations around here, as I've said, WRVU 91.1 FM, which is Vanderbilt station, WRVU.org. Yes, sir, in the back.
I don't want to I got a question. It could take you a while to answer them. I don't want to throw you off track. So if you don't want to answer, if you want to file this, that's fine. But
Step closer so I can hear you.
I don't want to set you off track on your talk, so if you want to file this question, that's
I'm
fine.
easily distracted. I usually go off track anyway. Don't worry about it. What's the question?
How do you think that internet radio plays in here? Like, how difficult is it to set up a legally licensed internet radio station? And do you see that as a reasonable alternative for people that want to produce interesting content?
That became a lot more difficult just within the last couple of days. I'm going to comment on that towards the end of the talk. But basically, a lower court decision was reversed on streaming internet audio and the fee structure for that. And under the current court decision, if you're going to do streaming internet audio with copyrighted content, you're going to be paying a lot more money than is acceptable or possible for the typical hobby broadcaster. This decision may be overturned when it goes to a higher court, but it's going to be a slow process. And on one side, you've got everybody's friend, the RIAA, and all of their lobbyists who simply want to make money. I mean, nothing against making money. Making money is good, but they want to make money to the exclusion of everything else. I guess that's what they're there for. But at the same time, they're kind of setting these pricing schedules unfairly so that your typical hobby or non-commercial broadcasters will not be able to compete. There is a reason for that. The National Association of Broadcasters, which represents commercial broadcasting interests in the United States, and the RIAA and the major labels, don't really want competition, and they don't want alternatives to their radio stations. And this all goes back to the money issue again. If you have a wide choice of things you can listen to, different radio stations, including a lot of community low-power FM radio stations, if you have streaming internet audio, you're not listening to the Clear Channel near monopolies and the other big commercial stations, and therefore they're losing audience. They can't charge as much for their advertising. They don't want you to have alternatives. I got you a second ago. I want to get this someone has asked a question yet.
the whole thing is dilution of control.
Delusion of control. Yeah, that's a very good one too. Yeah, thank you. Good phrase. Yes, ma'am.
Along the same lines, though, under that ruling, it's not just the small little independent streaming audio. It's also apparently major radio stations who are broadcasting over their websites, doing the exact same broadcast. They're having to pay double for the songs that they're playing.
Yeah, the laws are screwed up, and the lobbyists and commercial interests have really kind of fucked up the licensing schedule, licensing fees, the fee structure. It's going to take a while to untangle this. Right now, only really the largest chains, radio networks, can afford to do it. And let me get off the. All right, a couple other comments about college radio. There are some organizations and groups of people. I mentioned the National Association of Broadcasters and Commercial Broadcasters who don't like things like college radio stations because it's an alternative. You're not listening to their stuff. Another group that apparently has a problem with college radio stations, especially those that are pretty much entirely student-run and broadcast a lot of rock and roll or alternative music, are religious organizations. Surprise, surprise. There are many documented instances of religious radio stations causing malicious interference to college radio stations, starting letter-writing campaigns, claiming that college radio stations are broadcasting obscenities, and from personal experience, this does happen. When I first started broadcasting at WRBU, we got a letter into the radio station from a young woman who really enjoyed the metal show. And her dad was apparently a minister at one of the more conservative fundamental churches around here, and she tipped us off the fact that there were a group of about half a dozen churches that were monitoring WRBU 24 hours a day. They would call in and try to get DJs to play things that had cuss words in them or things that couldn't be played on the air. And every Sunday after the regular church sermon, they would sit around and they would coordinate letter writing campaigns to the FCC. Complaining about WRBU. This is not what they put in the letter, but according to this young lady, what was said in the sermons was basically that, and this is a quote, "We are of the devil and corrupting the youth of Middle Tennessee and must be stopped. The agents of Satan must be removed from the air."
They were speaking nothing but the truth.
Well, yeah, but we do have freedom of speech and freedom of religion in this country. If I want to go out and be a devil worshiper, no one can say, no, you can't do that. Well, they can say that, but they can't stop me from, worshiping Satan or Bob or whatever it is I want to worship. So, say again?
Microsoft Bob.
Angel of Satan right there. Yes, sir.
Is that the genesis of the devil music program?
That's part of it,
Yeah,
yes.
so.
Yes, it is. In fact, I'm kind of, we were listening to argue a little bit. I haven't heard any of the ones I did, but I made confession time here. My show was usually Saturday late night, early Sunday morning. I would go on the air at midnight and go technically till 3 a.m. Sunday morning, sometimes longer if the 3 to 6 DJ didn't come in. So I had the people who had to listen to the radio and then go into church a few hours later, so they weren't getting any sleep, and I figured, I'm going to make this as unpleasant for them as possible, and hence was born 91 Noise, Middle Tennessee's only noise experimental, especially Japanese noise, radio show. So, 3 hours of feedback, like Thursday Neubauten, Marisburg, gay, chainsaws, random explosions, several sound sources going at once, all dedicated to these people. Every now and then I would throw in negative language, Christianity is stupid, or HBC's here to die. And this prompted usually a fair number of phone calls, especially when I was off on a good rant. And about half of the phone calls would be from kind of sad but concerned people who were worried that I was filled with so much hate and they were going to pray for my soul. And because, Jesus did love me. And these people, okay, you're not trying to force your stuff on me. You're not judging me. This isn't directed at you. I got no problems with you, okay? You seem to be a nice person. This is directed at the people who call in and tell me that I'm going to burn in hell and they're going to shoot my mother and rape my dog or something like that. I got a lot of phone calls like that. And let me tell you, once you take the obscenities out of them, they make really great station IDs and promos. And this is one of the reasons you get in radio, because the people who call you up, you can record their phone calls and legally broadcast them over the air again. So if you can promote good stuff, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I had some of the most creative PSAs and station IDs on WRU from people who really wanted to kick my ass. It was great. So there was, I'm trying to remember what the church was here out in Fairview. There was a low-power historic community radio station for a while, and one of the church organizations out there was pretty much overpowering their transmitter and drifting a little bit off frequency so they could deliberately interfere with this station. And the way they get away with a lot of this is, let's admit, churches, nonprofits, they got a lot of money. And they believe they're doing, the Lord's work. So you've got basically a bunch of fanatics, religious fanatics with money behind them who are going after small college radio stations for the most part that don't have big budgets. For instance, WRVU's budget, you think Vanderbilt University, they burn money for heat in the winter when they're cold, but WRVU gets maybe $10,000 a year for its annual budget. All it takes is one big FCC fine and it's fucked. There have been several instances where the transmitter has gone down due to the weather. Stuff's out there 24 hours a day in heat, snow, ice, rain, whatever. It does break occasionally. And WRVU has been off the air for months at a time, and they simply didn't have the budget to repair stuff. So, college radio station option is fun. It doesn't take as much social engineering as some of the other ones, and under the right circumstances, it can give you the most freedom to be creative. You don't have to play just music. I've done talk radio shows, call-in talk radio shows. Those were a lot of fun, and you get access. You get exposed to a lot of different types of music, and the only thing I'm going to request you do is don't be a dickhead like a lot of college radio students who go in and DJ for maybe half a semester and steal music from the stations. It takes a lot of work to get good music sent to radio stations on a regular basis. And if you steal stuff from the station, how hard is it to burn a CD nowadays? If you steal stuff from the college radio station, you're just denying everyone else from hearing it. That's one of the reasons I started my large music collection, was because I got tired of going in and finding shows like, oh yeah, this song will mix great in with this one, that can do this. Half the music I want to play is gone. So, if you want free music, working at a college radio station is a good way to get it. You can simply contact, excuse me, I'll blend that out, right? You can simply contact the smaller record labels and send them copies of your playlist every week. And say, look, I gave your stuff, here are the bands I play, here's what I'm on air. Can you send me some more stuff from your label? Or we used to have this disc and it got stolen. Send it to DJ, whatever your name is, at care of the radio station. So, I'm not trying to scan free CDs out there. A lot of times when you do that, help alternative tentacles. Them, Jello Biafra, Dead Kennedys. I got 2 complete sets of everything alternative tentacles had in print. When I met Jello Biafra a few years ago and asked about this. And one set went into rotation at the radio station, and the rest was for me. I just basically said, okay, cool, if you're going to play all thanks for the playlist and keep it up. If you want more of our stuff, here's one set from the station, here's stuff for you. Yes, ma'am.
I've always heard also, I used to work in bookstores a lot, and that was something fairly standard that they used to do, and it was almost like a little extra perk if you like books. You would get extra copies, preview copies of all these different things, a lot of times even before the official book came out, and they would give them away to the employees. I've always heard that radio stations do a
that
lot of
happens a lot
they
too.
give extra copies and previews.
That happens a lot too. Radio stations will get a lot of promo stuff that's not available for sale. In fact, we would get remixes, we would get live versions of stuff, we would get CD singles, entire albums of things that were never for sale to the public. And again, you have a quick copy, and there you go. Got some interesting 9-inch nail stuff back when they used to be cool, and just all sorts of oddities. A lot of the stuff eventually winds up on the peer-to-peer networks or on the Usenet music groups as rarities or bootlegs. Okay, I told you about the college stations up here in Atlanta. Up here in Nashville, sorry. Check around down in Atlanta. We've got WREK, which is 40,000 watt radio station from Georgia Tech. I'm going to start doing helping out with the hour of Slack. I'll get to you in a minute. I'm going to start helping out with the hour of Slack, which is the Church of Subsidies broadcast there now that no longer work weekends. And I didn't know this station existed. WRAS, which is Georgia State University's radio station, 100,000 watt student radio station. It's the most powerful student-run radio station in North America. Hell fucking yeah. All I gotta do is sign up for one class at GSU, and I'm behind the mic of a 100,000 watt transmitter in a major metropolitan area. I would piss off so many more people than I ever upset here in Nashville. Cannot wait. Okay, yes, sir.
Did you require a GROL or RROP DJ on the WRBU?
No, when I first started DJing at WRBU, basically we took a test that was pretty much a competency test. This is how I run the board. This is how I turn the transmitter on and off without blowing stuff up. This is shit I don't say on the air, like I just said right there. And that's all that was required. At the time, the FCC would send you, wasn't a Class 2 radio telephone operator's license. It was
RROP, restricted radio output.
yeah, they would still send those out. Nowadays, with college radio stations, pretty much as long as the general manager or the staff in charge of the radio station certify that you are technically competent and you know the FCC regulations, they're going to take their word. It's kind of like a general license. The station's got the license to broadcast, and they assume they're going to train the DJs. If they get complaints, then they investigate. Oh, the church stuff. Let me wrap that story up real quick. This was fun. I tormented these people for a while, and so did various and sundry other folks. And what eventually happened with that was the closest FCC field office is in Atlanta. They sent an agent up here very quietly one week, and the guy checked into whatever that hotel is across the street from Vanderbilt, the big one on West End. And just sat in this hotel room, kind of monitoring the station or listening to it when he was driving around his little rented car, and went back to Atlanta and filed his report. And we had a copy of the response hanging out in the station wall for a while. It got taken down when the station relocated at one point, but it's still probably on file. And the FCC letter that was sent to these churches, and a copy was sent to us as well, it said basically, they're doing nothing wrong. They're a college radio station. If you don't like them, you don't have to listen to them. Why don't you spend your efforts doing something more creative and productive for the community in which you're in? Okay, something that Nashville does not have, but it should have, is a good community radio station. Again, this is pretty much a non-commercial radio station. It's not affiliated with any university or college or anything. That's run by volunteers, usually unpaid volunteers. Sometimes the general manager and the music director will get paid a small salary just because it is a big job running something like this. We've got a really good station down in Atlanta that's 89.3 FM. It's also 100,000 watts. And good mix of jazz, blues, reggae, community news and events. Pretty much what music and news type radio could be if it's done well, and if you eliminate the driving commercial interests that pretty much exclude everything else. Unfortunately, I'm an idiot here, I don't remember the call letters for the station. It's just 89.3 FM, but Google 89.3 Atlanta community radio station, you'll probably find them pretty easily, and they were streaming as of a couple days ago. I'm not sure what the streaming situation, how that's been affected because of this recent court decision. Nashville could use something like that. I think it would be a wonderful thing to kind of maybe some variety aside from the top 40 crap and WRV, which I love dearly, but God damn, how many techno shows do you have to have? You know? It's like every new DJ who comes in wants to do a techno dance show. Low power community FM, LPFM, was supposed to be the alternative for that. Who knows what I'm talking about? Hands up. And real quick, since I'm going to watch time check, I want to make sure I don't run into it.
We have about 5 minutes.
Shit. All right, I'll talk fast. Low power community FM radio was supposed to be the alternative to the commercial monopoly. You had several different broadcast ranges between 1,000 and 1,000 watts, and what this was supposed to do is FCC investigated very carefully, made sure that these stations would not cause interference with major commercial broadcasters. These small stations were supposed to be non-commercial, serve the local community, and preference was going to be given to stations that were not primarily religious in organization, because there are enough religious stations out there on the FM, especially the AM and shortwave bands. Unfortunately, the National Association of Broadcasters again saw, competition, alternatives, we don't want this. So they went in basically and lied to Congress, made up this CD that they handed out to Congressmen saying, if we allow this to happen, it'll destroy commercial radio in the United States. It will cause interference. All radio stations will sound like this. and they played this CD that had two stations interfering with each other and a whole bunch of static, so on and so forth. They created that in the studio. It came out after the laws had gone in, pretty much banning what would allow the most low-power community FM stations. They couldn't find a situation where they could accurately record this with the Congress, so they just made it up. And you've got lobbyists here with false information. They lied to Congress versus the FCC, who their engineers have been regulating the airwaves and keeping them interference-free and usable for decades. But money went out, and what they did was they eliminated the clause in low-power FM radio, which would have allowed for what's called single-channel spacing. The FM dial goes from 91.1, 91.3, 91.5. For large commercial stations, you have to have 3 of those channels between them. You can't have commercial stations on 91.1, big, powerful commercial stations on, say, 91.1, 91.5, because the more powerful you are, the more likely you are to cross secondary, tertiary harmonics. And inadvertent interference will make that police edit out. And low-power FM stations would not have caused this kind of interference. The FCC researched it for years before they put it on the drawing table. The National Association of Broadcasters convinced Congress, no, the low-power FM stations have to be spaced out the same way the high-power commercial stations are, and that meant instead of suddenly thousands and thousands of new radio stations popping up all over the states, there were only a couple hundred slots available, and none available in the major metropolitan area, because all the available slots were already filled up. They thought they were going to be able to put the low-power stations in unused smaller slots. That was taken away from them. We do have a license here in the Nashville area for a low-power community-oriented radio station. It is WRFN, Radio Free Nashville. They've gotten their permission from the FCC to do a 100-watt radio station in Pasco, which is out I-40 West towards Franklin and Fairview. They would be on 98.9 FM. Their website is radiofreenashville, oneword.org. And hopefully they will be on the air if they don't have any other stalls in about 18 months. They do have a snag that's come up recently. A station in Lebanon, WANT, a 5 kilowatt religious station, has filed a petition with the FCC to deny WRFN's license. The reason they're stating is unacceptable interference. WANT is a 5,000 watt station located 70 miles away from the proposed transmitter site of WRFN. Basically what it boils down to is WANT does not want to lose, their signal is only protected after a certain range. People can pick it up outside this range. They don't want to lose the audience who's outside their authorized range to WRFN. They have no legal right to broadcast or expect to be received beyond that range, but they are, and they don't want a community radio station preventing the heathens from hearing the word of God, not that they couldn't hear it from a bazillion other sources in that area. So the Radio Free Nashville would be a good one to get involved with. The low-power FM radio movement, they may reverse the decision on the triple channel spacing and take it back to single channel spacing if that happens. And once again, you'll see hundreds, if not thousands, of low-power, non-commercial community-run radio stations start popping up for good thing. National Public Radio, the reason I do not send them any more money is because they sided with the National Association of Broadcasters as far as low-power community FM radio, and they essentially lied to Congress, or they did not speak out about what they knew not be true and allow this law to go through. So as far as I'm concerned, National Public Radio, which now pretty much plays commercials these days too, accepts a lot of advertising, is pretty much in the same category as the National Association of Broadcasters, and I will not put any money to them again. They were worried about losing money and contributions from their listeners and having people go, oh, hey, I can get involved with a community radio station. Why do I keep sending my local NPR station money? So, probably your least likely option as far as getting on the air is with a commercial radio station. A lot of the clear channel stations nowadays, guess what? They don't have DJs. The programming that you hear is all pretty much pre-recorded. It's run from someplace else and it's streamed out to a remote transmitter where they've got pre-recorded ads on a computer queued up to be played at certain times between the same songs that are being broadcast out from every other transmitter within the network. You have a comment, question?
Lots of censorship with that.
Yeah. And the censorship.
What was the John Lennon song they censored? Imagine?
Oh, they actually censored
I think
Imagine?
so.
Why? Why? It's a wonderful song. I mean, Imagine There's No God. Maybe some people were offended by that. So, Clear Channel is pretty much the largest commercial chain here in the U.S. as far as broadcasters go. I think they've got 8,000, 9,000 radio stations. They own almost half of the commercial FM stations in this country are Clear Channel stations. They own several thousand more over in Europe. They're beasts, and they play nasty, and they do things like if you, what was it? They ties to Ticketmaster, and if you don't go, if you're a band and you don't want to go through Ticketmaster and let Ticketmaster get their cut, and you don't want to let Clear Channel get their cut, they pretty much will not give you venue space to play, and they will not play your song on the air, play your songs on the air. A couple of bands have gone indie and are having a hard time because they can't get into the venue areas anymore because they make a lot of money. They don't get a lot of airplay. Let's see here. ADM, that may make a comeback in the not too distant future. They've been playing a lot of the digital ADM, which should be rolling out more widespread. It's set up a couple of test locations, and digital AM is kind of interesting. You've got a lot longer range, and the sound quality for digital AM approaches FM quality. If you listen to current AM stations, it's not that great, and that's pretty much a cesspool of pretty much religious broadcasters these days and sports news, and that's about it, but maybe that'll change.
Foreign language stations are ending up on AM these days as well.
That doesn't surprise me. It's not that bad. Let's see. A couple other things I wanted to point out here. FCC is kind of weird in their rulings and their restrictions. Y'all remember, what's his name, the YouTube guy, whatever, they ran these a couple years back, saying on the air, American Music Awards? Yeah, correct me if I've gotten this wrong, but the FCC statement for not finding the radio, part of the TV stations involved was that it was not classified as obscenity because it was not used in a sexual content. Which makes me wonder, does that mean if I can...
I don't think it was sexual. It was not used in an obscene. It was not meant in an obscene.
Not meant in an obscene
context. It was used more as...
Obscene being used mainly to promote nothing more than sexual desire activity, if I remember the correct.
Here's the word to mean, really. He said, this is fucking brilliant.
Fucking brilliant.
Yeah, it was
Fucking
just,
has
just
so
an
many
adjective.
connotations,
Yeah.
Very
So they're kind of weird on what we can and can't get away with. The rule I used on WRBU was if I saw it, if I heard it on TV, and I used the TV show NYPD Blue as my standard, then I could play it on the air. So all of a sudden that allowed me to play songs with words like asshole and dickhead, and which was fun. There was a cool William S. Burroughs song called "Did I Ever Teach You About the Man Who Taught His Asshole to Talk?" William S. Burroughs, the guy who wrote Naked Lunch, if you're not familiar with him. Fun stuff. The interesting thing about the using fuck on the air is that I hear the classic rock radio stations a lot of times play the Who's Who Are You, and you can quite audibly hear Who the Fuck Are You twice in the lyrics. And another one was Pink Floyd's song Money, where they say bullshit, and the commercial stations don't get fined for that. So they're kind of selective in what they do and they don't fine. What they will find is this happened about 18 months ago. The FCC proposed a $7,000 fine against non-commercial KBOO FM in Portland for broadcasting the song Your Revolution, a collaboration between Ninja Tune recording artist DJ Vadim and spoken word artist Sarah Jones. The song comes from the DJ Vadim USSR Life from the Other Side, released in 1999. The commission claims that it contains unmistakably, patently offensive sexual references. And KBOO counters its missions provide a forum for unpopular, controversial, neglected perspective. And Your Revolution is a feminist attack on attempts to equate political revolution with promiscuous rock. Now, there were no obscene words in the song at all. They proposed a $7,000 fine against this community radio station because they didn't like the content of the song, and some religious groups in the area objected. So, There you go. Hope you got something useful out of this. As I say, it was thrown together kind of last second. And I was hoping some of the other DJs in the area would be able to show up, or at least one of the Radio Free National guys could, since they've spoken at PhreakNIC a couple times in the past. But that's about it. I'm done ranting and babbling to someone else who's supposed to be coming on momentarily. Got any other questions real quick? Anyone? Okay, thank you.